Welcome and thank you so much for coming to our final business Agile Leadership and Business Agility meetup of 2020. I'm looking forward to this one. It's been, before we start, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who's joined this meetup and who's turned up to our sessions. We only started in April 2020, believe it or not. We're very, very new, and we're at over 850 members already. So much appreciated with the support on this. I think there's been some really cool stuff, and I hope we'll continue to do that. And since we kicked off, we've had, just looking at the list of speakers, we've had Perry Timms, Sean Cooney, Saurabh Salimi, Dave Snowden, Jesse Fuel, his book's just come out, Joe Justice, John Smart, Maria Mattarelli, what a list, and that continues today. So I'm going to get out of your way now. I'm excited today because we all know that the very first value of the manifesto for Agile software development is individuals and interactions over processes and tools, right? But yet this, almost everywhere I go, it's the people side that gets forgotten. We talk so much about processes and practices, but what about people? And there are so few people who are so deep in that space, really doing great stuff, and Pia-Maria is one of them. I'm sure you're familiar with her work. I read her book, wonderful book, Agile People, some time ago, and I hear that there's a follow-up to that, which I'm excited to hear about. I'm sure she'll tell you more, but she's been doing a lot of great stuff in the Agile HR space, a space that really sorely needs more attention. So hopefully she continues doing that, but she's here speaking to us tonight, and I'm very excited. So I'm going to get out of your way and hand over to the wonderful Pia-Maria.
Oh, thank you, Karim. What a presentation. You're awesome. Yeah, and okay, nice to be here, everybody. Really nice to see you, and maybe hear you later, because I will try to leave some space for questions for you as well. I'm going to start by kicking off with a presentation, PowerPoint, to show you a little bit about my view of how do we need to work in the future with HR and with management. So this one is dedicated to all leaders out there. How is this change going to look like? So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to share my presentation with you so that you can get a bit of an inspiration, and then I'm going to open up for questions and conversation about the topic. The Agile People Leader, the role for managers in the future of work, is which I'm going to talk about today. So I'm Pia-Maria Thorén, and I'm the founder of Agile People. And Agile People is a network of dedicated Agile People coaches around the world who are all passionate about combining people and Agile to create engagement. Thinking is the hardest work there is, which is probably the reason why so few engage in it. This is what Henry Ford said. And it says something about the way he viewed people. A few people in the top create structures of micromanagement that flows top down. And he divided people into workers and thinkers. And the workers were used for their bodies, and the thinkers did all the thinking. This is a picture from a Ford factory, and people were indeed a part of a machinery on this time. It was scientific management, also called Taylorism. It was a theory of management that analyzed workflows, and its main objective was to improve economic efficiency, especially labor productivity. And it was one of the earliest attempts to apply science to the engineering of processes and to management, and it was highly effective for meeting challenges of that time, which was mainly about industrial manufacturing and logistics. So they built these management systems of standardization to create efficiency at the production line. Today, the situation is totally different, as you may know. Ford actually had a very easy situation because he was the only manufacturer of cars, and the T Ford only came in one model, and they were always black. Today, as you know, competition is fierce in the car industry. And it's a totally different game, which is why this way of working doesn't really work anymore. How we view other people, however, becomes the first and most important learning here. Douglas MacGregor, which is a bit of a hero in my eyes, he was very early when he wrote a book in the end of the 1950s. It's called The Human Side of Enterprise. And in that book, he wrote about theory X and Y, and it's about how the human mind works. We can either view people as if they are X, people are lazy, they are unmotivated, they don't want to take responsibility, and they need to be motivated by carrots or sticks. Or we can view people as Y, that people want to be the best they can be and contribute to create value for others. And they also will do so if they get the right conditions in the organizations. So the takeaway here is really that most people see themselves as Y people, and it's only other people who are X. So then you can ask yourself, is this just a prejudice that we have about other people? And if they would get the right prerequisites or conditions in the organizational system, they would probably also be Y persons. Or it's really about the system of work that we are providing to our employees. Do we believe in them? And do we set them up for success by providing a system where they can release their full human potential? Or do we set them up to fail by not giving them the opportunity to do what they do best every day, not removing impediments for performing, and not giving them the resources they need to succeed? If we make sure that every person can show up every day and be their best selves, do we then believe that they will perform better and be happier at work? This is important because how we view people affects how we structure our management processes. It all starts with how we view other people and what kind of structures we believe that we need to build to set them up for success, or rather the lack of structures in this case. This is another example of the X view of people, how it played out in history. And this time we are visiting the ironing department. And today these women are replaced with robots. And for them, it was about doing the same thing over and over again. And the challenge here was to make the flows as effective as possible and to standardize processes. The women on this picture had no say in how things should be done. It was all carefully thought out by a few in the top, and they were just doing as they were told. If we instead move to the future of work, this is the transition that we see will happen. And it has already started and has been speeded up by the pandemic. You know, artificial intelligence and robotics will ultimately actually create more work, not less. It's much like today. And the majority of the workforce will freelance, not be employed by some employer. In 2027, there won't be a shortage of jobs in the future, but there will be a shortage of the right skills to fill all the jobs. And remote works becomes the norm. And it's already started, as we can see in the pandemic today, and it will only speed up with time. So in this complex reality, we have to move from viewing the organization as a machine that can be controlled and managed to viewing it as a social system. An organization is nothing else than a social system. People are not cogs in a machinery. They have feelings, dreams, challenges, thoughts, and they cannot be controlled. People are not robots. They are complex adaptive systems that work from intrinsic motivation. And it means that we need to stop to see people as resources and view them as the living organisms that they are. And they need to be treated differently to work optimally, because everybody has a different personality and likes to do different things and have different values. No standardization or boxing people with labels or grades anymore, just skills to understand better what makes each person tick and do what they do. And to create a well-functioning social system is a very complex task, and we need to use a lot more experimentation and trial and error for it to work. There are no recipes for success here, and Agile is definitely not the silver bullet. So what do you need to do to make a person function optimally? That's the big question. Care about the basic psychological needs of people, and they are different for everybody, which makes it even more complex. I've written 3 books about the topics of Agile HR, Agile leadership, and human motivation at work. And this is the first book that came out in 2017. This is the second book. It's a picture book with 220 illustrations that complement the message from the first book. And then this year, an opportunity presented itself in the form of the pandemic. So we took this opportunity and wrote a third book together. My Agile People friends from around the world and me myself, 35 people wrote this book together. It came out in September 2020, and it's a co-creation between ourselves. And we have all written 1 chapter each about the Agile People principles, because we believe there are 35 principles that we have gathered together that we need to increase in organizations to make them great organizations to work in. We're going to talk a little bit now about the problems that we see with traditional leadership and traditional HR. The problem is that we believe that we can control reality and make this perfect plan, but reality really looks different. So the problem is that the world is not predictable anymore, and we need feedback regularly from reality to make the right choices along the way. So instead of making a perfect plan that we already know before it starts will not happen, you could say that in Agile, you accept reality as it is and adapt to it. And the problem here is that we are focusing on the shareholder value when we should focus first on the customer value and the employee satisfaction. Happy employees serve customers, and happy customers will lay the foundation for a profitable organization that can deliver value to shareholders. But this is a consequence of the value creation happening between employees and customers. So as Frederick Laloux so brilliantly puts it in his book, Reinventing Organizations, profit is like the air we breathe. We need air to live, but we don't live to breathe. So here is another problem for you. Our organizational system is not making it easy for us to perform. Instead, the system is limiting us, putting obstacles in the way for great performance and letting people be themselves and perform from their abilities. So we need to fix the system. It's really, the definition of control is that it's the power to influence or direct people's behavior or the course of events. And in business terms, this means controlling people and controlling the future. And the grand illusion then that many managers or leaders in organizations today have is that people can and must be managed, and the future is predictable and manageable. And we all know, especially now, that this is not true. The budget problems. It's a very time-consuming process. And here I have borrowed a little bit from Bjarte Bosnes, who is a chairman in the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable. We've done some training together, so I'm borrowing some items from him here. Assumptions that we do when we are performing the annual budget process are extremely quickly outdated. Bjarte, he used to say that the minute you press enter and the Excel sheet for the perfect budget is ready, it's already outdated. It stimulates unethical behaviors, like competition, and we're trying to not help other people because we are trying to reach our goals first. And then we might have time over to help other people, but our goals become extremely important here. It creates illusions of control, but we don't have any control in reality. And decisions are made too early and often too high in the organization because they don't have the connection to the reality and don't have the right knowledge and information about what's happening in the moment. So they really can't make the decisions there and then when it's needed in the moment of truth. It guarantees that we have planned costs, but not the planned revenues. And it can prevent other value adding activities that we could engage in if we didn't have this fixed annual budget. It's often tied to this traditional performance management cycle where we have fixed annual goals. And for that, we get a grade in a 9-box grid that is then tied to a certain bonus or a compensation or salary box. So the underlying assumptions here is that someone who does not perform the work knows better, and employees are just motivated by money and rewards. One tool fits all, and it also builds on the idea that the individual affect how the whole system behave, which is not true. So the traditional performance ratings, here we see a lot of problems as well. A year is too long when the organizational reality changes too quickly, and there is no proactivity here. We are focusing only on judging the past. We are not moving into the future, looking at how can we improve for the future. Does the boss really know best how I have performed? Well, maybe there are other people who knows better. It's also connected to the salary, which leads to sandbagging and lower set goals, because we want to reach our goals, obviously, to get our reward. So we don't have any need to really set a very high goal for ourselves. Why would we, if we know that reaching the goal is a condition to get our reward? And these sub-optimizing effects that we see in the organization breed competition, not collaboration and cooperation, which is what we need and want. And we are focusing all on the wrong things, just results and not the behaviors of people. Another problem, and there are lots of problems, as you see, is the employee engagement. The vast majority of our workplaces are not actually great places to work, very far from it. From 69 to 94% of employees are either not engaged or actively disengaged at work. So the last problem that I want to bring up to you is the management, the leaders in organization. They are today feeling a lack of psychological safety in those huge, big, agile transformation programs. What will happen to me and my role, they're thinking? What will become of me when everybody seems to be able to lead themselves and don't need to be managed anymore? And this problem needs to be taken very seriously and can potentially ruin the whole change initiative. The skills that took managers to the position they are in today are often not the skills that are needed to lead in a complex world. And for an agile organization, it's more about removing impediments for people to be able to perform than managing and making decisions. Although sometimes the organization needs someone to make tough decisions when the teams cannot do it themselves. And how do managers go from traditional high power and status to servant and transformational leadership? We need to make it possible for leaders to change in the system by changing the environment. And we need to inspire leaders to find intrinsic motivation to do that and to help them to attain an agile mindset. These are two conflicting goals, as it's only the leaders who can change organizational structures that will make it possible for increased business agility to happen. And to do that, they need the mindset. But they can only get the mindset by having the right structures and environment. So it's a catch-22 dilemma here that I don't have a good recipe for how we're going to get out of that. But what can we do instead? People ask me all the time, what should we do about all these problems that I've been talking about? I actually have some ideas. And one of the ideas has to do with the new role that leaders and HR need to take for the future of work. So we believe that the agile people leader is a new role that more and more people discover. We created this new role because we believe it will be crucial for HR and leaders to change their role fundamentally to support their organizations and the people to be able to increase agility in all corners of the company. So the Agile People Leader is a role where you use many competencies and you become more T-shaped depending on where you come from. You can come from, for example, HR leadership or an Agile coach role. We have three different leadership perspectives, but it all starts with you. How do we work with ourselves to develop the necessary leadership skills and self-management techniques, understanding your basic needs and why you do what you do? And it's different from other people. We are all biased and we always think that our own basic needs are the best and we try to impose them onto other people. But when we understand ourselves and when we understand how different other people are from ourselves, we can overcome the differences and create high performing teams. The next level is we, and that's about helping the team to develop from, Susan Whelan's stage 1 to 4, how groups develop in 4 stages. Here is how we can take on different leadership roles depending on what stage is the team in. And then finally, we have all of us helping to create the structure and the culture and moving towards a shared vision through continuous improvement in an emerging strategy. So in agile organizations, a leader is responsible only maybe in one area, either people, product, technology, or process. In an agile people leader, coach the people in all these areas to improve value and flow continuously. And the people skills become a lot more important for an agile people leader. What about HR? HR should be leading the change. And I believe that HR has been sitting in the backseat for too long. And it's all about the people, really, and the system in which the people work. And if we can get the right conditions to people, they will take care of the rest. And HR has the power to decide on these structures that can either support people to perform or make it more difficult to contribute in creative and innovative manners, because HR is controlling change management, leadership development, talent acquisition, performance management, all these deep structures. And if HR keeps holding on to the old ways of doing things, we don't have the possibility to change in any part of the company. So HR can support or hinder the change towards a more agile organization. And that's why HR needs to go first and take the first steps, start with themselves, and then start to deliver products and services that breed agility. And here HR has the opportunity to really make a difference. We're going to look a bit more on agile people leadership for the future of work. And it's really moving from managing performance, micromanaging performance, telling people exactly what to do. And also, how do you build psychological safety if you're a manager? How do you create an environment where people feel free to speak up and admit errors and mistakes so that everyone can learn from them? It's not by micromanaging them. It's instead by enabling performance. So the CEO becomes the chief enabling officer instead of the chief executive officer. I love to talk about the gardener metaphor for leadership. And in this metaphor, the company is a garden, and there is an overall purpose with a garden. And it could be to be as beautiful as possible, or, to deliver fruits or vegetables. Regardless of the purpose, the garden needs to be taken care of to reach its purpose. We need to take care of the plants, and some like to grow in the shadow, some need more sunshine, and we need to remove the weeds around the plants. And some like to grow with other plants of diverse kinds to develop faster and become beautiful together. And some need a lot of space. Some need lots of water. So the agile leader is the gardener who takes care of the plants, trying to fulfill the purpose of the garden. And the gardener can create prerequisites for the plants to grow by giving the right conditions for every plant without forgetting about the whole garden. So, we cannot force the little seed to grow. We cannot yell at it or scream or command it to grow. The only thing we can do is to give the right conditions and the right environment. And then we can just hope that it will grow. And if it doesn't, then we need to deal with that. So it's really a lot like gardening, this agile leadership metaphor. We need less bureaucracy, less approvals. We need to focus outwards on creating value for customers instead of looking too much inside. We need to work with emerging strategies instead of with fixed long-term planning. We need to let people and their passions guide us towards a common purpose. The annual budgets linked to fixed performance targets and bonuses needs to be removed entirely and replaced with regular forecasts, feedback conversations, and flexible rewards based on how the company perform as a whole. And if we look at the beyond budgeting roundtable, in reality, where everything is dynamic and nothing is stable, we need a whole new kind of leadership. We need to move from the X view to the Y view of people. The rigid detail and annual processes are outdated today, and the rule-based micromanagement needs to give place to relative and directional goals. And we need dynamic planning, forecasting, and resource allocation instead of centralized command and control, secrecy, sticks and carrots. So this is beyond budgeting. It's a more human and more adaptive way of leading people in the future of work. Also, scenario planning or OKRs can help you to create a common path towards the vision, and people contribute in different ways from their own intrinsic motivation. It's important that you keep moving and improving in the same direction. Otherwise, you may not see your future inside the company. You might have your own dream and then you need to leave. So instead of business planning in the future, do scenario planning. There are probably many different scenarios, and the reality will probably not be exactly like any of those scenarios that you map out, but it will probably be a mix, but at least then you are a bit more prepared for the future. So job descriptions is something that we also simplify in the future of work. They are not, they are boxes for standing in, not living in, I want to say. So we stop to close people into job descriptions. Instead, we see them as a stepping stone, as somewhere to start, because we need those T-shaped people with one or several specialist areas and the broad general base. And this is boundary spanning on an individual level, we could say. And this creates flexibility for the whole organization, both for the individual, for the team, and for the whole organization. It makes competency shifts possible and easy and minimizes the risk for bottlenecks in competence. And we get a much better business adaptability to meet the changing organizational competence requirements. And we don't have to fire people because we don't need their job role anymore. They can always do something else if they are T-shaped. So traditional manager to agile people coach. So we're moving from low or no competence in lean and or agile to very deep competence in lean or agile. Deep skills in some specialist area. Instead, we need deep people skills. Instead of being process driven, we need to be people and purpose driven. Instead of a fixed, we need a growth mindset. Instead of command and control, I decide. We move towards empowerment and alignment. I facilitate. Instead of focusing heavily on numbers, we focus more on the people. Instead of artificial harmony, we understand that healthy conflict is a good balance, as long as we don't move towards personal attacks. Instead of telling people what to do, we storytell to inspire action happening. Instead of judging employees in ratings, we coach employees to perform. Instead of local optimization, reaching the department budget, we optimize for the whole. Instead of deciding on career paths, we mentor growth. And instead of carrots and sticks, we work with dialogues about intrinsic motivation with our employees. Instead of decision delay, we have a faster decentralized decision making when we have empowered people. Instead of speaking and proposing, we are framing, probing, and listening. So this is a shift that leaders need to do in the future of work. The roles of the Agile People leader can be many, and except for the Agile coach roles that are visible here, the trainer, mentor, coach, and facilitator, you can also take on the role as the guide, for example, or the navigator, or a reflective observer. And you can come from being a leader, an HR professional, or a master of Agile, an Agile coach of some kind. What can we say then about the leader and explorer? Well, this role, it can come from any department within an organization. They have deep leadership skills, and they have likely been in development for several years. And they might have had a specialist role within a certain function, or they have a proficiency in various leadership frameworks, or simply possess a general broad leadership competence. And they have the ability to make hard decisions when no one else is willing to take on this responsibility or put a stake in the ground. And the Agile Master obviously contribute with Agile and Lean tools, methods, practices, and principles, and have a deep experience from using Agile in a variety of industries or situations. And the HR professional, this individual has experience as an HR business partner or manager or specialist, and they have a solid general understanding of what makes people tick and are capable of having hard conversations to inspire people to excel. They are also actually the only role in the organization who deal with negotiations with unions and have competence around labor law and societal regulations. The guide has deep knowledge about the specific place that you are in right now, or about the specific topic that you are working with. And they can take you on a journey to understand the process, showing you the path through the particular surroundings, and often teach or facilitate via examples, stories, and expertise. In Agile organizations and Agile teams, they are very often dealing with situations and challenges that are complex in nature. And the human tendency is to look for the easy way out, the best practices, as we call them, or to copy what others are doing. When in a complex situation where you have a wicked problem, as we call it, the right strategy is instead to experiment, probe, sense, respond, we talk about. And the navigator is someone who is comfortable with complexity and helps the team to step into this explorer mentality, framing the issue, formulating hypotheses, designing safe to fail experiments, and learning quickly what is promising and what is not. And then we have the facilitator role. A great facilitator will lead, help the process move forward without putting in their own opinions and thoughts and concerns. A coach, this role needs to be mastered by all Agile people leaders, I would say. The coaching role is the keystone skill set that every Agile people leader needs to have to become proficient in. And at the heart of the coaching role is the coaching mindset. And this is the belief that in general, people are capable and smart and fully able to figure out their own solutions when they can think clearly about the issues and challenges. And then we have the trainer role. In many situations, especially when the team or specific members don't have the basic knowledge of what to do, the most effective and quick way forward is to be able to teach it directly. And this is the role of the trainer. A mentor is someone who has experience in your domain, who can give you guidance, constructive feedback, advice, and help you from his or her own experience. Often, but not always, this person is from within the same area or company or role as the mentee. And then we have maybe the most important role of all is this one, the reflective observer. Um, Rather than jumping to conclusions or reacting too quickly and possibly wrongly, you can figure out what's going on with the team and how you can best help them in whatever scenario they are in. So the skills that you need to cultivate here is that of self-awareness and self-regulation. And in particular, that of being able to observe without judging. In doing this, you can create for yourself the ability to step outside the situation, outside of the system, and observe the group dynamics and the system, and look at the organization from outside for a moment before you step in and decide what role to take. How can I serve my organization best right now? And the opportunity that we have here is to pick whatever role fits the purpose, the people, the situation at hand. So depending on the needs of your people, you take a different role to support them. This is obviously a very senior role, and it takes a lot of time to master all of them, but that's not the point. I mean, you start somewhere and you develop continuously throughout your whole career, throughout your whole work life. So let's face it, nobody can be fantastic in all these roles from the beginning. This is a lifelong journey that you are starting somewhere, but the ambition is to be able to master at least a few of them. You always work on improving yourself and being able to play more and different roles. So we can't do it alone. I mean, to be able to remove the limiting structures that we see, we need to join forces. And HR cannot do it alone. Leaders cannot do it alone. Finance cannot do it alone. We need everybody to start talking across boundaries of different kinds. There are so many functional, geographical boundaries, generational boundaries, all sorts of boundaries in an organizational traditional system. We need to start the conversation. We need to nudge the system and the people and move in a common direction together. So Agile is not a recipe for success. We know that when we work with Agile, we don't follow any recipes. There are no recipes or best solutions that always work. We do know that when we stick to certain principles rather than rules, it tends to work well. But we also know that best practice is always past practice, and only the mediocre companies use best practice. So you will never be better than your competitors if you follow best practice all the time. That's why we in Agile prefer to work with the principles as the basis, and in Agile People in particular. And then you can use different tools to make those principles come alive. However, there is no guarantee that the tools and frameworks will work for you. We need to add a good dose of Agile culture and the right conditions in the environment. Having said that, I'm going to give you a recipe for change. You start by changing or removing the limiting structures. They often come from finance and the HR in a huge, large traditional organizations. And then we increase instead supporting structures like, OKRs or Scrum or Kanban boards or visualizing tools, stuff like that. And then we start to show the new behaviors that come from learning new ways of acting and working. And then we start from one again, because those structures have a tendency to creep back on us. So we created the Agile People Manifesto, and This was put together in 2019 during 4 intensive days in my summer house on the Swedish west coast. This is our gift to you. And with this, I'm just going to give a last shout out to you. Um, I think you should start today. Corona is actually not um, some excuse to not do anything. Um, on the contrary, I think you should speed up the process right now, right here. Follow the principles, start your personal and organizational learning journey towards greater people and business agility. The sooner you start, the sooner you will reap the benefits and come out of the crisis and reap the benefits from happy performing people working together towards a common vision instead of letting people sit and wait because we cannot make any decisions because of the pandemic right now. I think it's an opportunity that you should really take right now. So we invite you to join the Agile People community. You can participate in an Agile People training online, or you can become an Agile People leader yourself. Our next training starts on January 11 in 2021. So visit agilepeople.com for more information. And now I would like to open up for some questions from you, if you have any. So there, I think
I'm talking on Zoom. I've seen a few questions popping up as you were talking, which I've captured. Thank you for that. That was awesome. We've got time for some questions. So, folks, if you want to post those in the chat, that would be really good. As people do tend to drop off, a 30-second interlude, if I may, because whilst we are done for 2020, we are back in 2021. And what a way to start. We have Bill Joyner on the 6th of January, I believe. If you don't know Bill Joyner, you need to know Bill Joyner. He has done a ton of research into what great leadership means, and he's created the Leadership Agility Framework. So good that I went all the way to Boston to spend 2 days with him, and you don't have to go anywhere. So check that out. That's going to be in January. He's going to be talking about that. But apologies for the digression. Now I'm going to capture the questions that came out during the session, if I may. So we had one from Femi. Now that you have mentioned it, something that's been bothering me, we no longer refer to people, we see that, people as resources, yet we still retain the R in HR. Should we drop the R?
Yeah, it really maybe matters. Some people say, oh, it doesn't matter, the name doesn't matter. And some people say, yes, words have a meaning. I tend to think that words have a meaning. I agree. We should make Agile People Coaches or Agile People Leaders out of HR instead of calling them human resources, because it's a name that is not very flattering, is it? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I have to agree as well. It's too easy to refer to people as resources, isn't it? We are people. Thank you for that, Femi. We have a couple from Lorna as well. Unfortunately, one of the things I'm seeing, or as a result of the pandemic, is managers have resorted to micromanagement. Question: should management be a specialist job rather than an ad or a title?
It is, you are actually a specialist in leading if you are a manager, right? So you could call it a specialist in leadership if you want, even though some people would say that's contradictory because leaders are generally generalists and they're not specialists. But what I do think is that all leaders who became leaders because they were fantastic in a specialist area that is not leadership, they should go back and do that because they are probably more passionate about that specialist area than leading people. Because leadership, I believe, is about growing people. It's about helping people to grow and develop. That's people management, right? So if you're an engineer who became a manager because you were promoted, go back to what you love doing instead and let other people lead and develop people, because that's what managers should be doing in the future of work. It's to coach, it's to remove impediments, it's to really put the people first and be a servant coaching leader.
Fully agree. It's what Bill Joyner would call expert leadership versus catalyst leadership, right? Focusing on the task versus focusing on the growth and the culture. And I think the two are poles apart, and that takes time to grow. So thank you. Another question, one from Jen, which I think has just popped up. Unfortunately, one of the things I'm seeing since or as a result of the pandemic is manager. That's exactly the same question that I read out. So let me go back. Any tips for creating that psychological safety in an environment where people are used to being told what to do and are afraid to put their heads above the parapet? Some managers feel threatened by this new approach.
AgilePeople.com Safe Game is a free game that you can use to open up for dialogue in your teams, including leaders and managers, obviously. So that's a bunch of cards that there are instructions in there that you can use as well. It's a free tool. Anybody can use it. So it's a way of inviting your leaders to a dialogue about psychological safety. That might help. I'm not sure. Yeah, it is difficult. They are feeling extremely unsafe, right? Because they don't understand how can I be useful in an agile organization now that everybody seems to manage themselves. What will become of me? So this is real fear, and we need to take that seriously, because we don't want to get rid of leaders and managers. They have a lot of experience and knowledge and skills and competence that we want to keep in our organizations. It's just to understand how can they change their leader role, and how can they move into more supporting kinds of coaching, kinds of leadership. It's another kind of leadership, that's all. We still need leaders, we still need the people with a lot of experience and deep competence, and they need to develop in the way that I've been describing here, need to take different roles depending on the need of the team and the people in the company.
I agree. We've got that one from Yuri here. Do you think HR will need to undergo full retraining and coaching before they can train and coach themselves?
It's difficult to say, because it depends on the people, right? Most HR people who come to my training, they are already convinced that they need to change. So I'm lucky. But when I meet people who doesn't know anything about Agile, then it's a longer journey, obviously. So it, as always, it's different depending on who you have in front of you. All HR people are not the same. They are completely different and have different experiences and thoughts and aspirations, and
When it's funny, when I came to your class, which was wonderful, by the way, and I recommend it. I came in person. This was back when you could do that in Stockholm, and you and Beata did it together. I was struck by how many people in the room were not from the Agile space. Right? They were HR people in the room, right? Actual full-on in the weeds HR, which is not like the classes I teach, right? And talking to them, they were telling me that they go into HR in order to help to grow people. They don't go in there to make people conform to the dress code and all of this other stuff. But this is what they want to do from the ones that I meet. And this is just them going back to why they got into HR, right? It's about people.
Definitely. And I think most HR people had this dream when they started out, that they wanted to help and support and work with people, not policing them or creating structures that force them into processes, but they really wanted to support people. And this is something that they really can do with the Agile mindset.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Unleash the people's potential. I don't see any more questions in the chat. Would anyone like to verbally ask a question? You're allowed to do that as well.
Yes, it's true. Lorna Matti is saying something. Isn't it often the case that the enlightened are the ones that attend classes such as Pia? Definitely, that's the case. It's the people who are already convinced who come to my classes. And then we need to work with spreading the word. I mean, we need to talk to the people around us and use our circle of influence. All of us need to do that everywhere in all kinds of organizations, because we have a circle of influence and everybody has that. Everybody can influence somebody, right? And you create those waves on the water when you do that. So out there, get out there, talk about it, make your voice heard and tell people what you think and what you believe in, and that will have ripple effects. I promise you. That's how I started. How would the daily work of an agile HR person look like? Well, it's not so much about creating the processes and the policies. As I said, there's actually a lot of things that HR people can stop doing in the future of work. And there is a lot of other things that they will start doing, like going out there, like asking the business and working together with the business. Go to Gemba. Spend more time together to understand how you can support, involve the business in the delivery of HR deliverables, and work with visualizing your recruitment flow, or work with a Scrum for your HR projects, or different things. There is a lot of things everybody can start to do, the things that you do when you become more agile. And people say, oh, but we don't have time, but I think that there's so many things that you can stop doing, so you will have time. That's actually the thing.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, we will post this on our YouTube channel, and we will also post it on our website, but we'll also send a link out via email, via Meetup as well, so anybody who is here is going to get that, and you'll be able to click onto that, find the video very easily. But give us a couple of days, George, to work his magic and get that ready to be posted. All right. Any more questions? We have a few more minutes, but we don't have to use it all. We can give you some of your evening back. Last call for questions. Going once.
Going
twice. It looks like we are done. Pia-Maria, thank you. That was amazing. I really appreciate you coming and speaking to us about this stuff. Such an important topic, and we need more people talking about this stuff. So while I have you, Louise pointed me to a book called Agile HR recently. Are you familiar with it? Is it good?
Agile HR Community?
No, there's a book that's just come out. It's called Agile HR.
Yes. Yes, Natal and Rina has written it, I think.
Yeah, should I check that out? Is it aligned with your work?
Actually, I was sent it a few weeks ago. I haven't read it. I'm sorry to say. I know that Natal and Rina are into the tools and the real, the work of HR. How do we work with the tools and the processes? And I'm more of the whole organization wide. So we have a little bit different focus, the Agile HR community and me, and they are more into the craft of Agile for HR. So if you're after that, it's a perfect book to read. If you're after more of the organizational change and leadership and the culture stuff, then Agile People is more towards that. So we're filling different needs.
Okay, great. I just wondered, I'm sure I'll get round to it, but not before I've read your new one. I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Pia-Maria. That was great. Join us again in January, and for the rest of 2021, we'll have some more awesome speakers in agile leadership and business agility. But for now, we'll give you 7 minutes of your evening back. Go make the most of that, and have a wonderful Christmas and New Year, everyone. And I hope 2021 brings, well, at least the ability to get outside. So good luck, and I'll see you all in the new year. Thank you so much for coming.